What's up, everybody? John McLean with FPS Holsters here, and I haven't done a holster making video in a while, so I figured I'd make one. And I'm going to show you how I go through the process of making what I am currently carrying, and I have an order from a customer for, which is my Handmaiden Holster. So this is a sidecar style holster, uses a piece of TEGRIS, which is removable, that holds your mag pouch in place. These are the adjustable mag pouches that'll hold anything from a 2011 magazine all the way down to something like the IWI Slim magazine, which is exactly what this holster is for. So let's go in to showing how I make that happen using my standard fold-over mold. Okay, so for starters, you actually don't need to do any blocking for it, but essentially what you're doing is you're gonna have to mold this twice. You're gonna mold it once to get the right side and then once to get the left side, at which point you actually cut the opposite ends to keep this portion intact, and then you'll sandwich those together. And I actually have these half-inch nylon spacers that I run in there, so that's kind of what makes the sight channel. After that, you know, we put our regular retention pieces in place, and then the mag pouch is something entirely different. I still haven't refined how to get this as a fast, you know, making it in a faster portion, but essentially I oversized the mold, or I put a whole piece of Kydex on here, and then instead of cutting across the corner here, I actually will leave that intact, and that's where I'm going to place the two drill hole patterns that will fit where are we at? The little piece of TEGRIS that I have cut. Okay, so that's kind of just a real quick brief rundown of what's going to happen. And yeah, this customer has ordered it in gray, and he does want a mod arm attachment, so we're throwing one of those in place as well. So we're gonna get started. Gray Kydex, two pieces on the fold over, one piece for the mag pouch. Got my TEGRIS lined up, all the hardware and everything, so let's make it happen. Now, before anyone says anything, yes, I know it kind of looks like a little bit of controlled chaos here, but I promise it is under control. I can quit anytime I want, okay? All right, so we're going to just do small little gaskets here. You don't want a lot of space because you don't want it to be able to shift a lot like the rubber can make happen. And in reality, the screws don't necessarily matter too much either. You just really wanted to have this thing cinched down, so you can get the holes marked and then drill them. Okay, now so we're just trying to figure out, you know, once you got both these clips on, you want it to be nice and even, right? So it's going to be about right there. Now, it's important to also keep a gap from the holes where you drill it and the sight channel itself, because if you push it too far this way, then the nylon spacers will actually get in the way of the sight being able to clear the holster, especially if someone puts like suppressor height sights or co-witness height sights on their gun. You're really going to run into a clearance issue. So you don't necessarily want it all the way as close to the gun as possible. You do want to still leave a little bit of space there. So we're gonna pretty much line the edge up of the belt clip to the edge of the kydex and go from there. About right there. Now we're going to go drill these holes. All right. Got those holes drilled. Now we can undo this. All right, next, this is for a right-handed individual. It means that this is going to be the back place, which means that this is where the sweat guard is going to be. So we're just going to make a mark to indicate that we need the sweat guard to be here. Something along those lines. And then from here, on this end, we're pretty much just going to want to create almost straight across from where this indents in, over like that. So that's the front piece. This is going to be the back piece. You also want to make sure that this front piece is a little bit taller than where the clip is going to end. So that's going to fit perfectly right there. So we're going to cut those up a little bit. And then we'll get to folding the mag pouch over and get those holes drilled to fit here. So let's go do that. We've got it all cut down to a rough basic shape. I'm actually gonna start assembling this a little bit so that I can fine tune, sand, and grind out all the sharp edges and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll get to the magazine pouch. So again, we've got our spacers here. These are gonna go in the top portion here. And then I'm just gonna install some general retention here, even though the mod arm includes its own retention pieces. Again, that's because in order for me to properly sand and grind, I'm going to need access to this edge, and if I install it with the mod arm, obviously I take that edge away. So the other thing I'll do is I'll actually put, for example, right here. So you put the spacer. Now the problem is if I let this go, the post falls out, right? So I will actually go with a 0.125 rubber gasket here. That does a couple things. One, it helps keep the T-post there in place. And two, it will provide a little bit of compression so that we can really still have a little bit of adjustability when it comes to this potentially being a pinch point. Okay, so that will sit like here. And then normally this would go on top of it, but like I said, we're not trying to necessarily assemble everything right now because we still need the edges. We just want to be able to clean up a little bit. And then from here, like I said, we're just doing standard retention just so we can clean all these edges up and everything. Whoop. That fell right out. Perfect. So now I'm going to go through, I'm going to, cut the edges off so that it's not sharp, straighten everything up. I've got a little extra material here, so I got to grind this down because the way I like to run my holsters is so that the bottom of the trigger guard is flush with the holster. That is to make sure that you can get as high of a grip on the gun as possible right off the bat. See, right now with all this excess material, like my finger is down here, but when I draw, you can see that gap between my finger and the trigger guard. And I don't like that. I would rather be like this from the draw, which is why I will cut and grind the holster down to be as flush to the bottom of the trigger guard as possible. So that's what we're going to go do. All right, so we have the general shape of the holster completed, and now we're just going to do an initial fit test. You can see I've got still a little bit more material I can cut down on the bottom here, and some fine tuning. But other than that, pretty good start. Now I will say this, a few things about the holster, and I just want to explain. Why do I not keep Kydex around the magazine release? Well, that's very simple. I would rather have my body pressing into the magazine release, which is a soft spongy material and probably won't engage it, versus having a piece of Kydex. And I know you think, well, Kydex is rigid, right? Exactly. And if you bend enough, you're having a rigid, hard surface pushing into your magazine release, and you can disengage your magazine from your gun. If you want to know why I make my holsters this way, it's because I experienced that firsthand, which is why I don't do it anymore. So, fun little fact there. I will also cut it low enough to make sure any sort of optic that maybe has some overhang should be able to clear. So I'm going to cut down and straighten this edge out a little bit more. And there's actually quite enough play here, like the gun can fall out, which is good. I'd rather have that because I can always tighten these screws down. I don't want it to be so tight with it in its loose configuration that I'm kind of screwed. So we're going to fine tune that up a little bit, and then once that's completed, we're going to get to making that mag pouch. So yeah, now we're sitting good. You can see the bottom of the trigger guard is pretty much flush with the holster, which is where I want. We've gotten rid of any excess, so once you grip your gun, you're gripping the entire gun, not part of my holster. And I cleaned up that edge so we can clear any sort of red dot optic that you want to put on your IWI Masada Slim Elite. Now, I do have a question for those of you out there, and my question comes about this. With a sweat guard, see, me personally, I like it to be most of the way. I don't do fully 100% up to the top, complete flush, so this actually has to be ground down a little bit, but I know some people kind of like a half, or, you know what. And what's your take on a sweat guard for a concealment holster? Do you like it or not? Let me know in the comments. I'm going to cut this down a little bit real quick. So now that we've got the holster pretty much completed, minus some extra hardware, we're going to start working on this mag pouch. Now the mag pouch is a little different in a couple ways. One, it doesn't use your standard retention rubber gaskets like most things do. I run the mag retention devices. These are awesome because, like I said, it really kind of helps create different levels of retention and for different sized magazines without warping the Kydex. Like I have mag pouches that I've used where they were STI mag pouches that I used for Glock mags, and the problem is once you have them tightened down for long enough in that configuration, when you go to loosen them, the Kydex kind of has a little bit of a memory, and now all of a sudden all your STI mags fit a little tighter because the Kydex has warped to it. Now sure, you can heat it up, but that kind of sucks, right? Like I have to constantly be taking care of like rewarping my gear to make it fit. Well, that sucks. Magazine retention device helps alleviate that. So that's why I like to run these. Plus, I think you can really fine tune the level of retention with this versus the rubber gaskets where you have to be like, oh, no, half a turn was too much, but a quarter turn makes it too loose and da-da-da-da-da. So basically what happens is we're just going to heat up the metal here, or the middle, not the metal. Heat up the middle, fold it over a magazine, let it cool, get the mag retention device installed, and then start cutting it down. One thing I will do is that depending on the hand of the individual, so this is a right-handed holster, means the magazine pouch will sit on the left-hand side, means that what I will do is on the back side of the mag pouch, I will leave a little bit taller and kind of grind it at an angle so that when you go to either grab your mag or reinsert your magazine, you have kind of a little bit of a backer to help you guide that magazine back into the mag pouch. But yeah, that's essentially what we're going to do with this. Once it's formed and settled and I have the magazine retention device installed, is when I'm going to measure out the holes to drill so that we can attach it to the TEGRIS. So we're going to get to that now. All right, so I did cut off some of the excess that I know I'm not going to need, but you'll notice I flared out the wings. That's just so I can keep as much material here as possible. And now we've got our bar heated up, so we're just going to start to make this middle portion bendable. Back of the magazine to the fold. Take our clamp, tighten it down to the mag body, and let it cool. All right, so we are cooled down. Now we're going to install the MRD, and the first thing we're going to do is put a little bit of thread locker on the screws, because again, this magazine retention device doesn't rely on the screws to tighten or loosen the mag pouch. Oopsies. So once we've installed it, we don't want it to move. Now, for my Handmaiden holster, I do install it so that the MRD Allen key, or the retention screw, is facing upward. That's so it makes it easier to adjust. So because of that, means that the T-posts are going to go in from the back on this side, and everything else installs here. So put it in place. T-post, T-post, finishing washers, and the screws. So we're going to make these snug, but we don't want them too snug. Because again, I want to adjust the retention using that screw, nothing involving the Kydex as far as the Kydex itself actually squeezing. So in this position, this should be as loose as possible, which it pretty much is. So now, like I said, what I'll do is I'll pretty much keep this side the same height, and then I will grind it down so that it'll come to just above these holes here. If you wonder why I keep the holes, that's simple. This is removable from your mag pouch or from your holster. So if you say didn't want to keep it in the front of your body anymore and you'd rather keep it on the side, well then you just get a standard foamy clip and you can install it, and now you have a magazine pouch that you can just wear on your belt like normal. So that's kind of why I still drill these holes, even though we're going to drill 2 more, and that's actually going to connect the mag pouch to the holster. Now, as far as attaching the magazine to the holster, what do we know? Well, we know that it's going to be attached to the front end here. We also know it's going to be attached to a piece of TEGRIS. And we know that it's more than likely not going to be straight up and down. It's going to be at an angle. So basically, essentially what I do is I try and assume it's going to be about 45 degrees. Now, there is some more material. You can see how much material there is. All right, now as far as attaching it to the holster, we do still need to grind a little bit. You can see how much material there is left between the mag retention device and the edge of this piece here. And essentially we want to try and eliminate as much of this bump as we can so we can get the belt clip to essentially sit as vertical as possible. I mean, obviously it's going to be at an angle, but I do still want it to be mostly vertical, and any other fine-tune adjustment you want to be able to do with the TEGRIS kind of thing. So let's get to that real quick. All right, so just trying to show you what I mean. You can see now this is at an angle. That is so, that's your mag in. You draw it, and when you go to re-put a mag in, you kind of got a little bit of a backer to help you guide it in. Okay, so we've also cut a little notch out here. That is to help encourage this angle. I actually can take a little bit more out, so I'm going to do that. You can see how straight up this is at too much of an angle. We kind of want it to be not quite 45, maybe 40 or 35-ish. So we're going to remove a little bit more of this bump here. All right, remove a little bit more. Now you can see we've got a little bit better angle of attack for that magazine pouch to sit. So at this point, again, we're not using the clip because we're not attaching the clip directly to here. We're just using it because the hole pattern is the same for the hole pattern that we'll be attaching the holster to, right? So it's going to sit about right there. Make a couple marks. And we're going to drill those holes and start getting ready to attach this to the holster. Ta-da! All right. So we've cleaned everything up, and you can see I've removed as much material as possible without cutting into the actual pouch where you'd be able to physically touch bullets and stuff. So now we just got to get everything kind of sort of lined up and then finished up as far as the holster goes. So let's jump to it. Now, final assembly is always a bit fun because, again, like I'm not making this holster exactly how other people have, right? Like I'm kind of using what I have at my disposal and trying to make another product out of it. So yeah, it's just little different. But let's get to it. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna remove these screws out. So what we are gonna put in place now is the belt clip. Now, I do still run finishing washers. I don't know, I just think they look cleaner rather than just having a regular screw head. So I run finishing washers on pretty much everything here. So, let's go here. Oopsies. Okay. We want it snug, but we don't want it tight, right? We still want to make sure that's not a pinch point. If we want retention, we want to add it here, not up here. So that fits good. Now, for the mag piece, pretty more of these anyway. Some of those. I'm just grabbing all sorts of extra pieces here just in case I need them. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually just going to attach the magazine pouch to the TEGRIS. You can see those holes will line up pretty much like that. And now this attaches to the back side. Now the cool thing about this is that, so you'll have a little bit of adjustability of the ride height by going up and down on these holes here. I will run, I think those were a little bit too short. No, I don't want those. For this one, we will run the wide top screws. It's on the back side of the holster. It doesn't need to look exactly the same. And I want the wider head so that it helps pinch that TEGRIS in place. Okay, so that is now attached. This side is complete. Now we're going to complete this side by removing the stand-in hardware. And we're going to get around to the mod arm. Now the mod arm is a little bit, you know, there's a little bit of play available for it. I'll say this, here's my mindset. It comes with two pieces, one tall, one short. And essentially, if I'm gonna make a concealed carry holster for someone that is using like a full-size grip, so a Glock 17, maybe even a Glock 19, whatever, then I'll go with the bigger one. I want to encourage more resistance and more push to keep that grip closer. However, for something like the Masada Slim, it's not a very big grip profile, not very long, so I will install the short one. Obviously, you get the long one when I send the order into you, but the other thing I will do is I'll put a little bit of Loctite on this screw, mostly because I have had customers, before I started putting Loctite on here, tell me that this piece fell off, and like that defeats the purpose of a mod wing if you don't have the piece that pushes it, right? So this will be included in the package for the customer. This is the rest of the hardware. Now there is one adjustment that I make to the hardware that it comes with. The hardware comes with oh wait, no, that's right. I thought it used to come with 375. Now it comes with a 1/2 inch. So, all right. Basically, we're doing retention gaskets. T-post in place. That'll kind of help retain everything so nothing is falling out. Gonna need that. Screws are here. So, mod arm will go in place. This will go over it. This part is kind of a pain in the ass because you have to hold these pieces in place and stuff like that happens where it slides off and whatever, right? But essentially do that. Just got to get one screw started. Once that screw is in, it kind of gives you a little bit of freedom with the second one. And now, this becomes your primary source of retention. So, and removes fairly easily. A little bit more resistance, and we can add more and more as we see fit. Now, magazine, super loose because we haven't adjusted it yet for this mag size. So we take an Allen key, start to tighten it. Essentially, I'll put the magazine in and just let it flop while I rotate. Because once I start hearing it flop is when I know that I've at least reached a good baseline, and now I figure out, oh, maybe that's a little too tight for concealed carry, slight twist. Ah, there we go. That's about my sweet spot there. That magazine or that holster is a little bit too heavy retention-wise for what I want. That is pretty sweet. And there you go. So we've got enough clearance for optics, whatever kind of optic they want to put on there. We got a little bit of sweat guard. We've got access to our magazine release. If we choose to apply any pressure to it, trigger guard's completely covered. Again, if you want to take this off, you just remove these two screws and this piece comes off. This is also adjustable as far as height when it comes to adjusting the magazine, or you can also adjust it from the backside with the holster. Obviously, this would be the easiest solution there. But there you go. All right, everybody, well, there you have it. That is how I make the Handmaiden holster, in this particular case, for the IWI Masada Slim Elite. Guys, I hope you found the video fun, enjoyable to watch, and maybe a little bit informative. If you've never considered making your own holsters, it's a fun project to be able to get into. Last thing I'll say, as you can see, there's still quite a bit of hand fitment that goes into here. So, you know, I will say not every one of my holsters always looks exactly the same, cookie cutter, as some of those other companies out there. But hey, I hope that doesn't keep you from letting me try and prove that my gear works for you. So thank you guys so much for watching. Again, I'm John McLean with FPS Holsters. If you're interested in something like the Handmaiden Holster or any of my competition holsters or anything like that, you can check that out at www.fpsholsters.com. And actually, check this out. I just received a shipment of patches that I had made because it's time to make the biscuits. That's right. Some PVC patches are available on the website, so check them out. I've got a deal right now. If you buy a holster and you add a pouch into your shopping cart and use discount code BISCUITS, I'll actually knock $5 off the patch price. So, thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.